Welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 196 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 52 of A Storm of Swords. That's Arya 11.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter, we're going to try not to spoil any future plot points for you, and hopefully we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it to provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes, they'll provide some additional information about the characters and other things of note in this chapter. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. How was your Father's Day? That was just yesterday.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. I know your mother used to work for Hallmark, so I'm hesitant to make Hallmark holiday jokes.
Nobody in my family worked for Hallmark.
Oh, they didn't. We know somebody who worked for Hallmark, don't we?
It's not me or anyone in my family, so I don't know.
Well, I'm going to tease away then. It's a Hallmark
right.
holiday. I don't care about it. But
Yes.
Lucas was nice to me, so that was nice.
There you go. Holidays like this and Mother's Day and Valentine's Day, I just use it for the opportunity that it is to acknowledge appreciation, just to take a moment and say, I appreciate all this stuff going on here.
Well,
at least
you are consistently a nicer person than me, Mackelly. It has to be said.
The kids are supposed to do that technically on Mother and Father's Day.
Yeah, well, good luck with that.
Yeah. But yeah, I had a nice Father's Day as well. I got a really nice message from DC Wagner on our Discord community. He said, "Happy Father's Day, Mackelly. May all your jokes be funny today." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Thanks, same to you," because I know DC Wagner has a child. And then he said, "I didn't mean to leave Simon out. I just know his jokes are more sophisticated." And I said back a gif of a guy going, "Oof." Wincing.
I did see that exchange. I was like, I felt a little forgotten, but I take his point. Yes.
Well, I guess I do embrace dad jokes,
yes.
Maybe a little bit more than you.
This is true.
But otherwise, we had a really nice weekend. We Stacy and I took half a day off Friday, and we drove down to where Ethan lives, and we spent Friday night and Saturday with him. That was a really fun time. He lives in this section of town that is all 20-somethings, and it is just loaded with like nightclubs and bars and restaurants and breweries and all the kind of things that would be appealing to the 20-something crowd. And my assessment is it's great for him, a really great area for him to be in. But I will say that the amount of eating establishments is significant. The quality of food provided by those establishments, a little, not quite at the level for the cost, especially. We spent I'm old, all right? I can complain about how much something costs. We spent $60 on 3 cheeseburgers, and none of us finished the cheeseburgers because they were just like, they're okay. It's just nothing special for $20 a cheeseburger.
Were they huge? Is that why you didn't finish them?
Honestly, mine just wasn't that good. It was a big cheeseburger, but it wasn't worth continuing to eat it because it just wasn't good enough to keep going. The ice cream I had afterward was very good.
I met you.
Although it was like $7 for 2 half scoops. I was like, what? Let me get back to my section of town where I could go get a large milkshake for $7. But everybody was really fit, so I guess that's why. Nobody ever finishes their food, or they get too small of portions.
We're really sort of like circling around one of my all-time favorite jokes, which was Woody Allen's joke about the 2 ladies having dinner, and one of them is like, the food here is terrible, and the other one says, yes, and the portions are so small. I love that joke. I was watching some. I mentioned Emo Phillips to a friend the other day, and it got me on a kick of watching Emo Phillips jokes. And you know who he is? Emo
I
Phillips? Oh,
don't.
you don't?
No, I don't
You
know who
should. I
Emo
recommend
Phillips
him.
is.
You'll be surprised immediately by his shtick, but if you stick around for a while, he has some terrific one-liners. He's very, very funny. He
Like emo, EMO,
emo, yeah,
and then
yeah,
Phillips.
yeah,
Okay, I will check him out.
yeah,
I like a good comedian.
yeah. He's back. He's from the day, but
Oh,
he
all
was
right.
always extremely funny and just very curious. One of the jokes he said was he said I've always been afraid of pretty girls until one of them told me that they're just as afraid of me.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. He took a girl to the movies and he said and there was one creepy, ugly, slimy, awful guy besides me in the theater. No, he said sorry, beside me in the theater. I knew that would
that's,
make you laugh, that one. Yeah.
that's good. Good stuff.
So I have a big presentation at work tomorrow, as you might be aware.
Oh yes, that's right.
You've even contributed to it slightly.
Right.
Oh, no, yeah. I was just thinking as I said that I'd never incorporated your suggestion, but I have incorporated your suggestion, so it's
All
all
right.
ready to go. You are,
Glad to know I made the cut.
well, you're not going to be credited, but you're in.
Okay, right. Well, my idea made the cut.
Uh, I'm kind of nervous about it. I was working right up until this meeting because it's strange how nervous I am. Normally,
You never get
I
nervous for
know,
this kind of thing.
no, I normally don't. I think it's just because it's a subject where I really, really know what I know, and
Right.
the rest of it is a black box that I don't know. But the presentation is not supposed to be, here's Simon showing off the things he knows. The presentation is supposed to be the whole thing, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's got me a
Well,
little
that,
discombobulated.
yeah. That's a lot of things like that for me at work. I know what I need to know.
Yeah, yeah. But it's particularly bad. I kept so I thought, well, I'll use other people's work as examples. And every time I looked at other people's works, they weren't doing anything like I was telling people to do things. So I was like, oh God, I'm just doing something completely unique and no one's going to listen to a word I say.
Did you look up my stuff? Maybe I was doing
Oh,
it. I
yes.
usually ask you
Well,
for.
yeah, that's a good idea, actually. But it's a slightly a closed loop there, because I'm pretty sure I taught you everything that I know.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So yes, but at least you'd be showing stuff that you know.
But it's true. It would be reinforcing rather than all the other stuff which is undermining, you know.
Right. Do you know? So Taylor Swift, the singer,
I do know who that
performer.
is.
Yes,
I think I
she
could have
just
even come up
played.
with her name if she'd been in Game of Thrones.
Right. She's that famous
Mhm.
that even you would have known who she was if
I
she were a
might
Game of
even be
Thrones
able to pick
character.
her out of a lineup. That's how famous she is.
Well, she just played a concert in Pittsburgh
Okay.
in Acrisure Stadium, which is the newly named stadium. It used to be Heinz Field. It's now called Acrisure
Where
Stadium,
the Steelers play.
where the Pittsburgh Steelers play. It was the largest crowd ever in the Pittsburgh history. I think over 73,000 people came to. I knew several people from here who traveled all the way up there to see the show.
Funnily enough, actually, I was reading the other day that Beyonce's concert in Helsinki had a marked impact on the Finnish economy.
Oh, the whole GDP.
The whole GDP was
Wow.
they had a blip in it and they looked at it and they was like, oh, it's the Beyonce concert that caused this.
I tell you what.
Yeah,
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 it's
these
good.
big stars are so big now. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
and
They have so many avenues to reach people
yeah,
with social media and YouTube and all that stuff. Back in the day, it was just, whatever MTV was putting on at the time.
yeah.
Or who Ed Sullivan had on back before that.
But I want to apologize, Mackelly. Normally, I come with the bants all lined up for that chit chat, but honestly, we're kind of on a short week since the Red Wedding, and it's been hard to
We are.
be happy and funny after the Red Wedding.
True. Yes, I edited it over this past weekend, basically Friday through Sunday.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely not a mood lifter.
And then all we've done apart from that is then read the next chapter, which is not exactly a break from the misery.
No, it's definitely not. We're about to find out what it's about, I guess.
All right, so down to business. How did we leave Arya Stark? Last we saw of Arya, she and Sandor Clegane had infiltrated the festivities for Edmure and Roslyn's wedding on the eastern bank of the Green Fork at the Twins. They'd arrived disguised as farmers and were making their way towards the castle to reunite with their family and swear fealty to a new king, respectively.
Right.
Didn't apply to both of them. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one? When I say summary, I will say that this is the shortest chapter. This always reminds me of there's a book by Donna Tartt called The Secret History, and a guy really starts phoning in his work at university, and he hands his homework over to a comrade who looks at it and says, "It's like, my God, it's like, did you use like 18-point font and triple spaced?" He said it looks like a menu.
Menu. So this was George Martin's menu.
This is George Martin's menu chapter, yes. I swear our summary is longer.
Yeah, it just might be.
All right, away you go.
Okay, so Arya and the Hound head toward the Eastern Twin, the castle, that is. The ground's a mess because of the incessant rain. Arya sees torches on the walls and a stream of torches moving from the western to the eastern twin. The castle's not closed, as had been reported. The portcullis is rising and the drawbridge over the moat is lowering. Suddenly, the Hound halts the wagon. He tells Arya to get down, and when she doesn't, he pushes her down.
She lands lightly in the mud, Syrio Forel's training and all that, and only then notices the stream of riders pouring out of the gate. The Hound is dispensing with his disguise and arming himself. The stream of riders is huge, and the 3 feast tents are collapsing and afire. Over the racket, Arya can hear a wolf howl, but she doesn't know if she's hearing it with her ears or her mind. It cuts through her.
The cacophonous music finally takes shape into the Rains of Castamere. Arya recognizes it from Tom 07 singing it. 3 riders peel off toward the sinking wain. The Hound frees Stranger and leaps onto his back. He engages 2 of them while a third heads for Arya. She recognizes the sigil of House Frey, but can't understand what's happening. They're friends of Robb's. She throws a rock at her assailant, but only glances off his helmet.
The knight pursues her around the wagon, but before he can grab her, he's slaughtered by the Hound, who's using the axe of one of the first 2 as his own sword is broken in the throat of one of them. He demands his helm, which is hidden in a sack. She obliges and asks after her brother. Dead, is Clegane's blunt reply. They wouldn't keep him alive and then turn on his men.
Come with me. We have to get away from here, and now, he says, reaching his hand down to help her up onto Stranger. But she's paralyzed. We've come so far. The castle is open, and right there, her brother and mother are steps away. The wetness on her face is only rain, she's sure.
Maybe we can save her, but Clegane is adamant. The only move is to flee ASAP. She sprints for the castle as the portcullis begins to lower and the drawbridge begins to raise. He follows on Stranger. She slogs through the mud as fast as possible, but his axe takes her in the back of the head. So, the shortest chapter in all of the books?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think I looked through some of the chapters. Chapter 17 of Game of Thrones, brand 3, in my ebook format is like a few paragraphs longer.
Okay.
It's both are like 6 pages, and that one seemed a little bit longer. That was the falling and then flying dream that he had with the three-eyed.
God, that was hard work. This is a piece of cake compared to that one.
At least he saw some things we could conjecture.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I mean, that's very true. There's plenty of room for conjecture here. Here, it's kind of like, stuff happened.
We already know there's not a lot of conjecture left because we saw what was on the other side of the castle.
Right. Yeah. The only person conjecturing here is Arya. The rest of us know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely a short but not sweet chapter, I think is how I'd say. I'm honestly not sure which chapter is the harder read, this one or the previous one. All the bad things happen in the previous chapter. All the bad things happened in the previous chapter, the cat chapter, but we see the fallout for Arya here in this chapter, which, it starts with her realizing the castle's opening, unlike, that the castle's open, unlike what the guard had said. And she fights to suppress a smile of excitement because now there's nothing between her and her family. They can just get there. And oh, what a brutal way to start the chapter, giving this little girl hope that all the paths are cleared for a reunion that then is stripped away from her so quickly.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing I have to keep in mind reading this chapter, because we're omniscient as outsiders, sort of surveying the whole thing.
Right.
But the situation had to be desperately confusing to her. I mean, I know I wanted her to jump on the back of Stranger and ride off with the Hound, but she doesn't know they're dead. His conjecture
Right.
makes perfect sense and is probably correct, but she's come this far. She's bound to
Oh,
want to
yeah.
risk her life to be sure. Especially before riding off with the Hound again, let's be honest.
Right. Yes, it would be, so even for an adult, it would be hard to just
Yeah, I
leave.
think it would be almost impossible for an adult because you at least have a little bit of agency and you would get in there and you'd want to see with your own eyes.
True. That's true.
You
Yes.
know,
I can't imagine
walking away from
leaving
that
without
situation.
knowing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Right.
Um,
Gosh, but we've been at the Twins for so long. It's almost like a novella here within the Storm of Swords. It's kind of like the Battle of the Blackwater. That was 5 chapters because it had that Davos chapter on the water before we went Tyrion, Sansa. And but we've been here quite a while.
I will say
around the thing.
I argued last week, if you remember, that I thought they should host the ceremony in the Western Twin rather than the Eastern Twin to give them more protection from the armies should the armies get wind of it and come riding along. But I'd forgotten or I never knew that the between the eastern bank of the Green Fork and the Eastern Twin, there's a portcullis and a moat. I mean,
Right.
you raise the drawbridge, you close the portcullis, no one's getting in. Not easily.
Yeah, both
So
castles.
you can have it anywhere. You could do it on the wall in front of them all, and they'd be powerless to stop you.
That's true. That's unfortunately true. Yeah, both twin castles have the banks of the river cut out
To create a moat.
to make a
I
moat.
see.
And right now, that's even overflowing. Even the moat is, and that's what Arya was slogging through at the end of the chapter, was the overflowing
And
moat.
I think I'm right in saying that the eastern tower is the primary one. That's where Walder lives, I think.
I believe so. Yes, that's where his great hall is and stuff.
His
So.
great hall's there, yeah. So that makes sense that that's where they would host it, yeah. So that's all cleared up. I don't even get any pedantry out of this.
One thing I noticed is that you could kind of tell how these two chapters, Cat chapter and Arya chapter here, sync up by the music change.
Yeah.
Because you can see, we know in the Cat chapter how the events unfolded based on the music going from just terrible, just a hodgepodge of music, of noise, pretending to be music, to the Rains of Castamere, to just the solo beating drum.
Noodling on that a little bit. Why was the music so terrible? Was it simply to create a noise to hide the sounds of chainmail under the clothes? Or is there some explanation for
Yeah.
why the music was so bad?
So, because you would think maybe they just put people who really didn't know, really weren't musicians in the gallery to, for the ambush. But then they start playing Rains of Castamere.
So they are capable of playing, right?
Right, yeah. Apparently there was no, I think Kat said there was no lyrics being sung, but the the musicians all of a sudden seem to be able to find how to play that song, at least at a level that people could recognize what it was.
Yeah, I mean, all the way through these last few chapters, there's been this sort of like constant noise, and it just feels like it's masking something.
Right. Well, we did notice, because I was just saying we could kind of sync up the chapters based on the music. The attack on the camps started before the attack in the castle, because the Reigns of Castamere doesn't start until after the first tent is on fire.
Right.
So I guess they wanted to make sure the people in the castle weren't able to hear the screaming and fighting of the battle
It
outside.
feels like you could have nice music up until a certain point, and
Right.
then have them like just do the avant-garde punk rock stuff they've been working on, you know.
Right. Yeah, it's tough to know, because they pulled together and played Reigns of Castamere in a way that, now maybe it was still a really poor rendition of Reigns of Castamere.
Because your theory being that they were crossbowmen, not musicians. Yeah,
Possibly, yes, because most of them picked up a
right.
crossbow and started shooting people. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point.
there's a really great metaphor for the soldiers coming out of the castle that Martin uses right at the beginning of this chapter. It's Arya's thought, and Arya's thought is that rioters were pouring out of the castle gate in a river of steel and fire. And I just liked it because so much of Arya's story in Storm of Swords involves the river and how it shaped her life. First it was the path back to her family. Find the trident and follow it west and get to River Run and get to where her family was. Then, she was led away from the river by the Brotherhood Without Banners. Then she had the obstacle that she had to survive with the Hound to get across the river. That was an entire chapter dedicated to that. And then as they rode into the twins, it was the background noise to the mounting excitement of her reunion with her family. And now there's this river of steel and fire that is like the final insurmountable barrier to her ultimate goal of reuniting with her family, because we know they've been killed. So there is no reuniting with her family. So I just liked how he used the image of a river of steel and
Yeah, yeah.
fire. I thought I'd mention that.
I will say, dear listener, that Mackelly used to put this kind of thing in the discussion notes, but I would poach the good ones so often that he's now holding them back. And really,
I didn't mention that in there. You're right.
I would clearly have gone, well, as I was saying.
We were on a short week this week, so some of the stuff I just had to mention out of my own head.
So my biggest talking point for this whole chapter is the whole strategy here. So the Frey men are obviously attacking the starter forces. I mean, we don't know because we get in Arya's perspective. She just sees fighting and screaming and tents on fire, but we can infer that what's happening is the Frey men are coming out of the castle to kill the Stark loyalists. Right.
Right.
The
Yes.
situation has got to be pretty confused, right?
Oh, yes. I had
Because
that thought
some
too.
of the Northmen are going to be Boltons and Karstarks,
Right.
and they're going to look a lot like the Umbers.
Right.
Not a lot to choose between those guys, yeah?
A lot like the Flints,
Right,
you
exactly.
know.
But the Bolton Karstarks are clearly on the same side as the Freys. And some of the people amassed on the riverbank are going to be Riverlands houses with fealty to the Freys and the Tullys. So this whole
Right.
mayhem
Right.
feels kind of indiscriminate and ill-advised. So then it made me think, is it possible that the allies, the Frey and Tully allies and the Bolton's Karstarks get instructions to not to get out of the big tents?
Right. Yes.
That seems like a huge conspiracy to try and keep quiet.
It does. My thought was, because the tents, the first thing that happens is they pull the tents down on the revelers in there getting drunk. And so I mean, how else does it work aside from they invited these Northmen into the tents for shelter, drink, food, merriment, all that stuff. And the Frey Bolton side were told, don't drink. Lure the others in there, get them drunk, and as some sign that only this side knows, we're all going to leave the tents.
Yeah, I mean that even saying that though, you're spreading a word that could get back to Rob, you know.
Right. Or at least some of the people in the camps that might be able to put up more of a defense. They didn't put up any kind of defense because they didn't see it
Yeah,
coming.
yeah. And I mean, we were talking last week about whether Rosalind knew anything. If Rosalind didn't know, it seems like she's the only person within about 50 miles who didn't know about this because all of these people knew not to be in those tents when the fires came. I don't know.
Right.
The whole thing seems a bit strange. So it's too big for pedantry, but I'll discuss it here. How about this for a different tactic? If I was Roose Bolton, right? Rather than using the drunkenness and confusion to rout the Stark loyalists, which is certainly going to work. I mean, there's going to be none of them surviving this. What about there and go out there and announce in a big booming voice, House Stark is no more. I, Roose Bolton, am the new Warden of the North, and I'll bring peace back to the realm. You Northern men have fought bravely, but now it's time to go home. How many of them are going to take up swords against that?
Well, yeah, I guess it depends on. Well, for one thing, the Starks have ruled the North for 8,000 years, so that's a lot of history to undo.
Can't bring them back from the dead.
Well, true. I guess it probably would depend on how outnumbered they felt, whether they would comply or revolt.
But what would revolting do? They would be leaderless, right? Without Rob to lead them.
Well, and many of their liege lords were killed as well. You know,
Right.
the Flints were killed, and I'm sure a lot of now Galbart Glover left with Mage Mormont to go and try and round up the Crannog men to help with the attack on Moat Cailin. But I'm sure most of the other lords were killed
Right.
that were there. You know,
So even the ones who are pretty sure their lord is still alive, they're still in that impossible situation of, well, I'm not very happy about this, but this guy's saying he's now the Warden of the North and Lord of Winterfell. Or I guess I owe him allegiance now. Makes me think he probably killed my king, but what am I going to do? I'm just a soldier.
yeah, right. Yeah, I guess that's very possible. They might decide that, or they might figure we're going to fight for justice for the king in the north and our liege lord. But a lot would depend on how outnumbered they are. Really,
I mean, and they're all pretty drunk too, so it would be hard to
Right.
make a good decision. And you'd be like, well, what am I supposed to do? It could become a fait accompli by the time these people get together and talk it through. You could say, I mean, and I was thinking, I would open it to questions at this point, and some hands would go up, and I would say, look, the Lannisters have won. The Starks paid the price. Roose Bolton bent the knee to the Lannisters on your behalf to end the bloodshed.
Yeah.
That makes him
Yeah.
sound noble and wise,
That's
and
that's true. Yeah. I
also
could see
puts a
that
little
spin.
distance between him and the actual murder which he committed.
Which he was directly responsible for.
I just feel like that's a much better way to handle this situation. It's you want to paint Roose Bolton as a bad guy. You want to paint Walder Frey as a bad guy. I just think they might think this through a little bit. People are going to die, and allies are going to die at the hands of your allies here.
Right. Yeah.
Not only are you going to lose allies fighting your foes, you're going to lose allies fighting your allies here because it's going to be a mad scene out.
Yeah. At one point they were launching things on fire from catapults from the castle. And I thought, wow, that's pretty indiscriminate damage right there.
Unless the whole thing has been orchestrated with almost everybody knowing. That's the only bit that,
Right.
The whole way up the Green Fork, Roose Bolton was telling everyone, I want you all to keep a straight face, okay? But this is what's going down.
He was calling them into his tent 2 by 2, telling them the plan, swearing them to silence.
Yeah.
I
I just feel like only the most fiercely loyal Stark men would really object. And what could they do? Their fealty died
Right.
with Cat and Rob. There's nothing left.
Yeah, especially since they think Bran and Rickon are also dead.
Exactly. The best informed would think that Sansa is the only one left, and she's married to a Lannister. You get told the Lannisters have won, and the only Stark is married to a Lannister. Who are you fighting for at this point?
Yeah, you make a good argument. You paint a solid picture. I I could see it possibly working that way. I will say that uh, the tents were caught on fire by fire arrows streaking through the air, likely from those same archers Arya saw stringing their bows just moments earlier, which happened
Yeah.
last chapter. So,
Then again, anybody who was on the bank of that river, not inside the castle, who knew about this plan, I don't know.
hit run.
I mean, no, not necessarily that. It's just you've got the phrase knew. The phrase knew. They were inside the castle. They always knew.
Right.
But telling anyone outside the castle, that's going to spread like wildfire, that gossip. And it's going to reach some Stark ears. Now, that portcullis and drawbridge are up, but they can't have been up the whole time.
Maybe just a select amount of Frey, Karstark, Bolton men knew enough to get those tents, enough to get people into the tents and then get out of the tents and then pull the tents down and shoot the fire arrows onto the tents that were apparently already soaked in something flammable. I think the House Myatt man that showed up last
You said he was a
chapter.
Lannister loyalist, right?
Yeah, House Myatt is a house that has fealty to the Lannisters. I think it definitely shows that some planning went into this ambush. There was Lannister supporters, Lannister bannermen, hidden in the camp, clearly. And I think they probably were supposed to stay in the camp, in their tent, I mean, until one of them ran out chasing a half-naked woman. So, that just goes to your point that mistakes are going to happen if you try and cover up a conspiracy this far-reaching with drunk people.
Right. At this point, Arya hears Grey Wind howling in the distance. So you noticed something here that I hadn't really thought about. Is where is Grey Wind?
Right. Well, you remember in 2 cat chapters ago when they arrived at the twins, he wouldn't even make it across the drawbridge to the western castle without Rob's help. So and then Rob left Grey Wind with Reynold Westerling, and that's the last we know. We don't know where they were held. It sounds like, based on where the howling was faint for everybody involved, that it's probably on the western bank, the western twin, that Grey Wind at least was kept.
Right.
If he was in the eastern bank, it would be a lot louder.
Right. He would be here. Yeah. And actually, now you've said that, there's a tactic. Why not keep the Stark forces on the western side? Split them up. Don't let them mingle with the others.
Right.
I mean, I guess that might breed suspicion. Why are you keeping my forces away from your forces? But then, you see, the Freys could all pile out onto the western and attack only their enemies.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes. Yeah, I guess they wanted to draw them in with a false sense of security.
Yeah.
Like, come party with us. We're all friends. We've put wrongs right. But I will say, if the Westerlings are what happened or is going to happen to Reynold Westerling,
Who was on Grey Wind duty? Yes.
Yes, if the Westerlings are involved in this conspiracy, then hopefully he'll be spared. But if they're not, he's likely dead for the treason of his family, of defecting from Lannister loyalty to Stark loyalty.
Yeah. Although, I mean, I've got to say, even if they were not a priori betraying the Starks, they might get forgiven I don't know. The Lannisters are not the most forgiving, but it'd be interesting to see what happens with the Westerlings now because you're right. They probably at this point will pitch themselves as being we were just infiltrating to bring him down. Greywyn never liked us,
Right.
that kind of thing.
Well, that's the thing. Greywood never liked Rolf Spicer or Sybil
Yeah.
Westerling. That's or Sybil Spicer. That's
Jane's mum.
Jane and Reynold's mom. But Greywind wasn't aggressive toward Reynold. So does that mean that Reynold was truly an ally of Rob? Truly, I mean, he's a young
Yeah.
man, so he might not be. If there was any treachery going on, he might not have been aware
Is it
or
possible that
involved.
Reynold and Greywind are going to get away here because they are on the other side? They're not going to be caught up in this.
Right?
Has people been sent to dispatch them? Uh,
Oh, and you.
might Arya get a different wolf back?
Oh, that would be something. Yeah. And you mentioned in the summary, and as you just said that, it reminded me that Arya, one of the first things she saw was a lot of torches riding from the western castle to the eastern
Yep.
castle. So maybe there's not a lot of people left in the western castle to take care of a large, angry
Right.
direwolf.
Right.
But by take care of, I mean put an
Yes,
end
I
to.
assume that's what you meant. Yes. I didn't think they were going to throw it a juicy bone and hope for the best.
Right. Since he was upset. But so Arya, she comes across a bit of a moral dilemma here early in the chapter when she's deciding who she should throw the rock at, the Hound or the Frey knights that have come to attack the Hound and her.
Yeah. I have a rule of thumb along the lines of my enemy's enemy is my friend, which is uh, the person trying to kill the people who are trying to kill me is my friend.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, she held up for a bit because she's wanted the Hound dead for so long. He's been on her nightly prayer list since Micah's death way back early in a Game of
yeah,
Thrones. So, but the Hound is the lesser of the two evils here,
yeah,
as you point out. And one, the Hound, is trying to get her to her family. At least at this point,
yeah,
she thinks that's still the plan. And the other is clearly coming with a more
yeah.
sinister goal in mind.
Yeah, and I will say I definitely think that they've formed a bond of some sort. Now, obviously, it wasn't bond enough for her to jump aboard Stranger and ride off into the sunset
Right.
with him. But as we
Right.
said, the situation she was in just would not lend itself to that because she would be so intent on trying to get one last glimpse of her family or
Right.
disproving uh, the Hound's conjecture that they're already dead.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I tell you
No.
what, if their bodies had been paraded in front of her at that point, she would have jumped on the back of Stranger because
Oh yes, I
it's a
agree. I agree.
definitely a better the devil you know situation. Get out of there with him and live to fight another day.
Right. Yeah, but as you pointed out, she doesn't know, and it'd be really hard to leave in that
Yeah,
situation. I will say she sees the Hound's in trouble. He's fighting two men, and a third is trying to wrangle her, and she thinks of Micah before she throws the rock. And I'm thinking maybe she thought just for a quick bit there that saving the Hound feels like a betrayal of her
yeah,
friend. She quickly got over that when the Frey attacked her, but I think that was another piece of what she was wrestling with there.
yeah. I mean, obviously, Arya lives in an extremist that I can only project, but there's not much point trying to draw that kind of moral equivalence between things. You're not going to be able to move
Right.
forward with your life if you keep doing things like that.
Well, yeah, it does make it
Yeah.
challenging.
Um. So again, as we said, Arya is desperately confused because she not unlike everybody else thought the Freys were Stark allies, and now they're coming out and killing people indiscriminately, and the Hound is confidently predicting that her family are dead. Uh,
Right.
it's
It's a terrible situation. I wonder if maybe it wasn't the situation that it was if she wasn't so flustered and had actual time to sit and think about it, she might connect Elmar Frey talking to her about the dishonor done to his house and having the wedding to the princess called off. His wedding. He was supposed to marry Arya, although he didn't know he was supposed to marry Arya, and she didn't know he was supposed to
And he
marry
didn't
her.
know she was Arya.
Right, yes. I wonder if she might have put the pieces together why the Freys were attacking
But again,
the Starks.
she didn't even know that Rob was married, right? She heard
Right,
Queen Jane's name
right.
and she was like, "Who's that?" You know.
True. So yeah, she might.
She's
Yeah,
too far removed from
that's
any
true.
of that. Yeah, you're right
Yeah,
though. If you could spell it all out to her, she would be like, "Oh, it all makes sense now." But there's just no way for her to figure it out.
yeah. You know, a lot of people might have tried to reason with that Frey knight, divulging that she's a Stark, or at least she's with King Rob, and her thinking that the Freys and the Starks are friends. You know, might have tried to, like, no, don't attack me. I'm on your side. I'm Arya Stark. But she was observant enough and has good enough sense of people's character to know that that wasn't a good idea here.
He's also lived with the secret for so long that it's now become second nature
Yeah.
not to tell anyone. You know, she'd be hesitant
Right.
to tell Cat and Rob who she is. You know.
Yeah, so let's think for a moment. What happens if she does divulge to this guy who she is, and instead of this knight being killed by Sandor Clegane, she's taken hostage and brought in to Lord Walder and Roose Bolton.
Okay, that's a really nice thought experiment. All right, I've got two thoughts straight away. You go first because I've got
Okay.
mine two locked down. Two ideas for
Well,
what you
most of
might do.
mine are questions like, does Roose keep her alive? If he has designs on being the Warden of the North, does keeping her hostage prevent any northern uprising against the Boltons? And maybe he can marry her off to this future child he's hoping to have with Walda. Um, and then I wonder, Roose told Jaime and Brienne that Arya was lost and then found. Surely he lost her again when she was kidnapped by the Hound, unless he really has feelers out there and knew that she was kidnapped. So, was he just feigning, knowing where she was, or did he know she was with the Brotherhood? What was his long-term plan for her anyway, knowing that he knew he was going to do this?
Yeah, it feels like it was the Brotherhood. There was a spy within the Brotherhood sending him information,
Possibly, sure. It certainly
and not the
could
Hound.
read
I
that
mean,
way.
you're right. There's no way he knew about that. And actually, then it's also interesting then to think about the fact that the Brotherhood, before they met Beric, they really led her on a long journey away from where they probably could have figured out Beric would have wanted her to be. And it may be that someone in that original
Right.
party was like trying to get them closer to
Oh,
just a thought.
keep her away from her
Exactly.
family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lemon Cloak, maybe,
Yeah.
or
I mean,
Thomas
yeah.
Sevens, Anguy.
Somebody.
Huh.
But yeah, so actually you hit the same nail on the head that I did. Keep her alive. Marry her to your son. You know, if you don't have another son, legitimize Ramsay and marry her to Ramsay. And
Right.
then you've got a
Yeah.
lock on the north. You know, the north will be
Well,
the Bolton Starks.
you do, except for that her older sister was married to a Lannister.
That does give you a challenge to that. And no matter what you did in that castle just a few minutes ago, you're not the Lannisters. And so
Right.
you are of the north. And so maybe you win, the popularity contest that way. But I do wonder that the second thought I had was, does there become a tussle over her? Because the phrase, as we mentioned last week, long forgotten, was her betrothal to
To
Elmer
Elmore.
Frey.
Right.
Uh, do the phrase insist on that? Sorry, Roose, you can't take her. She's going to marry one of us because they want a claim to the north.
Right. Yeah.
They want to undermine Roose's claim to the north straight away.
Yeah.
Immediately, the allies
Yeah.
turn on
I
each
could
other.
see that. That's one of their favorite things to do is, try and climb that social ladder by marrying off Freys to important people of the realm.
So credit to the Hound. He tried to look after Arya. Well, credit to him as long as he didn't kill her. We were hoping he used the flat of the axe to
Yeah,
knock her down, not
right.
the sharp part.
Yeah, there's, the way the chapter reads, like the text reads, it sounds like he killed her, but why would he try and convince her to leave and come with him and then turn around and kill her?
I'm going to assume not. I'm going to assume they would have made that clear. Well, we'll find out if we get an Arya 12.
Right. Yes. You can look ahead in the book and see how many more, if there's any more Arya chapters, I guess. But yeah, he doesn't just abandon her, which is a low bar, but some level of conscience and care for this young girl.
Again, it's not that low of a bar for the Hound in some respects because there's a fiery battle raging around them, and he no
Right.
likey.
Oh, right. Fire. I
Yeah.
forgot.
So he could be wanting to get out of there lickety split and not hang around for the whining
Right.
child to whom he
Yes,
owes
yes,
nothing. He did what he said he would, but he does chase after
yes.
her and hit her with the axe, figuring put her out of her misery now because her life's pretty ruined. He may have a point.
Oh gosh, let's hope that wasn't his line of
No,
thinking
you
there.
wouldn't put it past him.
That's the way the text read
Yeah.
anyway. I will say he had the same reasoning that we mentioned regarding Kat's plea that Robb isn't gonna be left alive and all his men be killed. Last chapter when Kat was making her plea to Walder, she said, "Please let Robb leave. You can keep me, keep Edmure, keep whoever hostage, whoever's still alive. Let Robb leave." And we were like, "Well, I can understand the need to try and make that plea, but I don't think anybody's going to accept that because it wouldn't make a lot of sense to keep the king alive and kill all his men instead." So that's the same logic the Hound came up with there.
So what now? I mean, we have this odd couple in a strange land where the landscape has shifted immensely. I mean, it would be
Right.
so. Let's assume they go on some sort of like journey here, the two of them, to some place. God knows where they're going to go, but they're going to have no idea who are friends and foes. They've been
True.
avoiding people kind of carefully and using disguises wherever possible, but that's because they were. Well, it was already slightly confused who was a friend and who was a foe, but it's even more so now because there may
Oh,
not be any
yes.
friends for Arya Stark.
Right. Yeah, at least anyone who's outwardly going to say they are a friend of the Starks. Not right now.
Uh, I do have one suggestion for where they might go, though. To Lysa Arryn. Not a terrible idea.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's her
Yeah.
aunt. It's a fairly safe place within the realm, probably the safest place in the realm.
Yeah, and they don't know that Kat had already talked to Liza and they'd sent her letters and she's refusing to
Right.
cooperate. They don't know whether there's Knights of the Vale around or
Even if
not.
even if they were aware of that, doesn't mean they would be turned away. It is her niece, you know.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
the
Yeah.
Hound could find service there too, conceivably. Lysa, for all her faults, I would
Sure.
expect her to give them guest rights, not Frey guest rights, real guest rights, um, to her
Right.
niece. And there might even be a reward for the Hound. It won't be what he would have got from the Starks, but it'll be something, I would think.
Right. It possibly as little as being taken into her service, which, is steady job. That's what he needs. Yeah,
I couldn't think of anywhere else for them to go. I really couldn't. I was like, what else do you do?
right. You can't go north. I mean, what are you can't get past Mackellan anyway. Certainly not going to go west or south, so east is your only
Yeah.
option.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. There's a part we mentioned in the summary where Arya's probably crying in exasperation about the whole thing, but she thinks to herself, it's only rain on her face making it wet. And, even now, this little girl is trying to convince herself she's not crying because she wants to be so tough, so strong. But the very next line defies that need to be tough and, shows she's just a little girl who wants her mother when, she says, "We're here. My mother and Rob, they're just inside the castle. The gate's open." It's so heartbreaking. And the description says that, this line comes out in a thin, scared little girl voice. And all the tough exterior, the terrible adult things she's seen and has done all just melts away. And she's just a little girl that wants her mom.
Yeah.
It's tough.
It's raining in here now on my face. Do you have some background for us? This was the real challenge of this chapter, was background. Good luck.
It wasn't easy. So yeah, there's not a whole lot to go on here. So I'm going to tell you about the wedding.
The origins of rain.
Right. I'm going to tell you about the wedding of Lord Walter's older sister. How's that sound? Her name was Walda. No, I'm joking. I actually have no idea what her name was. Probably wasn't Walda. Didn't think. Anyway, her wedding was used as a front for an uprising to overthrow King Ares I. So once again, a Frey wedding is a front for overthrowing a king. So in 212 AC, Lord Frey, whose name I also don't know, came to White Walls to marry his 15-year-old daughter to Lord Ambrose Butterwell, who just happens to be in his 40s, so that's great. The rumor is that the marriage was prompted by his daughter being caught in a compromising position with a scullion at the twins, not to be confused with a scallion. In attendance at the wedding was a young Walter, who was heir to the twins. Lord Walter.
Yeah, I understood which one you meant. Yeah.
Okay, all right. You had a look on your face like you were too many Walters going on.
I was
here.
gripped. I was like I couldn't breathe with the excitement of it. Is what was going on.
I see. Well, do you remember how previously we mentioned the Blackfire Rebellion? No, I don't know why I'm asking you that. Do you
we talked about the Blackfire Rebellion. I remember that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. It was House Blackfire being founded by Daemon Blackfire, a legitimized bastard of King Aegon IV. And Daemon's unsuccessful rebellion was the first Blackfire Rebellion. And being that it was the first
suggests
Blackfire
there was
Rebellion,
more than one.
Yes,
you know, Charles the First
this
didn't used to be called Charles the First. He was just called Charles.
Right. Just
after the
Charles.
fact, he became Charles the First.
Right. Well, this wedding and the festivities were secretly being used as a means of gathering Blackfire supporters to plan another rebellion. The plan was to rig the wedding tourney so that Daemon Blackfire's oldest living son, who of course also happens to be named Daemon,
why not?
Just to add to the confusion, that this younger Daemon would win the tournament and be given a dragon egg as his prize. They'd wait for the dragon egg to hatch, as Daemon, son Daemon, had dreamed that it would, and then they'd use the Butterwell gold and the Frey swords to start the second Blackfire Rebellion in earnest. I will say Lord Frey and Lord Butterwell were dubious of this plan, but they went along with it. Unfortunately for all involved, a squire named Egg was in attendance, and he revealed himself as Prince Aegon Targaryen and made up a story that his father's army was headed north for White Walls. So Lord Frey did what Lord Freys do best and fled, as did Lord Butterwell. They didn't get far, as a real army, led by Hand of the King Brynden Rivers, soon arrived and took control of the castle. Brynden Rivers, a.k.a. Bloodraven, did allow Lord Frey to go home, and there's unfortunately no info on what his punishment was. However, Daemon Blackfire tried to put up a fight, but his supporters were greatly outnumbered, and in the end, several co-conspirators were killed, and Daemon was taken prisoner to ensure no other Blackfire tried another rebellion. The plan was unsuccessful, as a third Blackfire rebellion rose up 7 years later.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. Great. So, comparison with the television show, An advantage of the television show was that it was able to intersperse scenes between the Red Wedding and this, so you could kind of so it
Oh,
didn't
right.
happen in a sequence like this. Uh, we saw Arya as the Red Wedding was happening within, and it was very painful. But the specifics are quite different. So she basically sneaks around and sees various horrors happening, including one that might be a spoiler for something that's still to come. So I'll hold off on that one. The Hound knocks her unconscious and throws her on the back of his horse. So it's clear in the TV
Okay.
show he'd kill her, but
Right.
they
Okay.
can diverge. It's not necessarily true.
That's right. That's what the comparison's for.
Pedantry corner, like I said, the only one is it's a character decision, so it doesn't count as pedantry. But I just think there are better ways to do this. That people who might oppose such a coup d'état were in a significant minority, and almost all would have bent the knee. Instead, you had this violent free for all in which many of your own supporters would have died. Uh, both routes lead to the same end. You're in charge, but Bolton and Karstark men might have leapt to defend their northern allies when the fighting started if they didn't know better,
Oh, right. Right.
and B have felt better about themselves in the change of power if it was done by telling the Northerners we're in charge now, rather than slaughtering them.
Yeah. We saw it work in the Blackwater. So many people bent the knee when it was
Yeah.
clear Stannis had been defeated. So, although, of course, those weren't Stannis. A lot of them weren't Stannis's men for 8,000 years,
No,
like
but
the Stark.
you know
so.
what? Their loyalty is to the North as well. But the North does remember.
True.
So.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes. The North does remember. That is true.
Newton knows.
Well, we are creeping ever closer to our 200th episode. And so don't forget, if you're not already a member of our Discord community, that now is a really good time to go out and join so that you can check out our live event that's going to take place there. You're not going to want to miss it.
It's free to join the Discord server, and you have lots of fun on there.
Right? Yeah, so doesn't take long. The link to our Discord server is in the show notes, so check it out.
And we review from T and Books, who's our new friend, on podchaser.com.
That's right. One of our newest members of our Buy Me a Coffee sustainers as well.
Books. I joined the podcast a little late when my first read-along podcast unexpectedly ran out, and it did take me a few episodes to adjust to the change in style, but now I wouldn't swap back for the world. Oh, I like that. Anyone who loves us from the first couple of episodes is has got a high tolerance because we weren't very good.
No.
There's clearly a lot of hard work that goes into creating this high-quality show, and I love every part of it, from the in-depth character analysis and background info to the comparison with the show and its pedantry, and of course, the wonderfully witty banter. Oof. It's a shame that came on this episode.
I was just thinking that bad episode for this one to be on.
These guys have kept me sane through multiple long-haul flights and otherwise boring household tasks. I wholeheartedly recommend this to all A Song of Ice and Fire fans, and think it's essential listening for anyone who really wants to do a deep dive into the world of George Martin. Keep up the excellent work, Simon and Mackelly. Well, thank you, T and Books. We really appreciate that.
Yes, thank you so much. That was a wonderful review.
All right, let's conclude. So, incredibly awful for Arya, who we assume is being rescued rather than murdered by the Hound, to be so close, only to be denied again. And now,
yes,
what's the future for her?
Yeah.
Does she believe Rick and Arya and Bran are dead?
She does, yeah. She was in the room with Roose Bolton when he heard that news.
So she thinks her only living relative now is Sansa.
Right.
Jeez.
Yeah. And, as close as she was to reaching the family in time for the wedding, and we were hoping she might get there in time to be a bridesmaid, it's clear now it's best she didn't make it in time.
Well, that's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that. Although, again, actually, like you said,
I was just gonna ask
she was
you.
a bridesmaid. You might whisk her away and keep her safe and sound, because she's a real bargaining chip if you can get a hold of her.
Right, yeah.
She's not exactly a bargaining chip, sorry. That's the wrong word, actually, because bargaining chip is what you use to get... if you were exchanging her for something. But it's not that. It's more like lending legitimacy to your claim. That's what she
Yes,
brings.
that's the right way to phrase
Yeah.
it.
And then the open question for me is where they go next. Impossible to know who's going to be on your side. The Hound's so recognizable and presumably wanted by the Lannisters for desertion. Uh,
Yeah, that is a problem.
and so
Yeah,
Arya's been wandering for 2 books now, but she's always had a destination in mind. But where now?
yeah. You know, your veil idea is as good an option as they have right now.
That's where you would go, isn't it?
Yes, I would. Yes, for many reasons, it's where I would go. They could also possibly, could they go back and find the Brotherhood without banners
Uh,
and be like, yeah, this didn't work out at all. Now I'm ready to join your cause.
I'll give her this. I'll give her back to you for that chest of gold you stole from me.
Yeah. Yeah. Would they take him back? He is a skilled fighter and he's pretty handy ally to have, as far as that kind of thing goes. But there seems to be a lot of people that aren't real big
No.
fans. But, a lot of the Brotherhood are broken men from various places, from various parts of the realm. He's pretty broken too right now, so maybe he could find a way to fit in.
There's a scene in Monty Python's Holy Grail where the
Oh, yes.
group of, I think this is true. I think I'm getting the right film. Although I maybe, for a second then I thought it might be Mel Brooks's Robin Hood Men in Tights. It's one of those 2 movies.
I
Okay,
liked
sure
both.
you'll
I
be able to
loved
fish
both
this
those
one out.
movies as a kid.
There's a line of people being given arms for their, because they're poor. And when each of them receives the arms, a big guy punches them in the face. And the sort of Robin Hood character sort of turns to him and says, "Is that completely necessary?" And he's like, "Aye." That's the Hound role in the Brotherhood without Banners.
Yes. He would do well. He would excel in that
Yes.
role. But, we've discussed, what will Roose do now? Is he going to continue hunting for Arya? If he thought before she was found, and now she's surely lost right now.
Yeah, I mean, if he has no knowledge, then she's a needle in a haystack and there's no point looking for her. But if he does have knowledge from the Brotherhood without Banners, then she becomes more findable. She's in the company of a 7-foot burned face freak,
Look for the Hound. Right. Yes, that is a distinction that doesn't necessarily stand out. And yeah, I mean, he could keep her around at the Dreadfort, as leverage, as legitimacy, like you said.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, there are worse outcomes. Actually, it's a terrible outcome for Arya, but
oh yes, it
honestly, there
is.
aren't any good outcomes for
Absolutely.
Arya right now. I mean, her life.
Not easy to think of one. I mean, even the Liza one. I mean, let's face it. We met Liza.
Oh God.
Not exactly someone you'd want to be your surrogate mother / aunt.
Nope.
Especially someone like Arya.
Well, that is one piece of good news is that we have a break from all this marital grief next time because we have a chapter with Tyrion. Oh God.
Oh, wait.
What have
no.
I said? I cursed it again. Yeah, so Tyrion next week should be fun.
Yeah, we finally get a break from the twins in the Riverlands. We've been in the Riverlands since that Jon chapter when he made it back to Castle Black. So
a little bit of
nice
sunny
to get back
weather
to
in
King's
King's
Landing.
Landing would be nice.
Sure, and they've got Dornishmen there now. So what could possibly go wrong?
I forgot. I thought about them the other day. I was like, we haven't had a single chapter since then, have we? Since their arrival.
Yeah, 300 Dornishmen in King's Landing with the Tyrells. What could go wrong there?
Mischief. All right. There are 4 ways that you could help us. You could leave us a 5-star rating and a positive review. Look, if you can't help us financially, we totally understand that. But if you leave us a 5-star rating somewhere, that'll help us spread the word, and that's as good as gold.
Absolutely.
You can buy some merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. You can buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal. Become a sustainer at the Lord Paramount or Knight of the Realm level, as T and Books did. And you can even donate to our cause directly through our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com. Any of those things would be most welcome.
That they sure will. And of course, you can always reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com, but go on out and follow us on our social medias. Twitter at @GhostHarrenhall. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
For listening.
Thanks.
Bye.